Hi, Gene Burnett from GeneBurnett.com. Hey, I thought we'd talk a little bit today about stances and the size of stances within the Tai Chi form. A lot of people argue quite a bit about what's the correct stance, how long, how wide, exactly what it should be. If you're looking at your form as a catalog of form movements, of form targets to be hit exactly so, or if you're training for a tournament or stuff, you may have to put very specific attention on exactly how far apart your feet are, how wide, how narrow, and where exactly your form is. I tend to think of the form as a catalog of ideas, or an index of ideas, concepts, principles. And so that affects my training goals. My training goals affect what I think of as a correct or a good stance. When people say this or that stance is better or this or that stance is good, I usually ask, good for who and for what? It depends on your training goals. Are you training for a tournament? Yeah, then you better do it exactly according to the tournament guidelines. But I train for daily life. I train for whatever's coming next, and I don't know what that is. So I train for things like responsiveness, adaptability, agility, fluidity. I want to be able to move according to the next situation, what it demands that I do. And I have an eye on combat. I don't train for combat, hard combat. I mostly train for daily life. But I think if I do have to fight or deal in a physical situation, I want the stances that I do in my form to be close to what I would do in real life. So when you look at stances, you have to think in terms of two dimensions, length of the stance and width of the stance. Length is the distance between your heels, front to back, based on where you're facing. So if I'm going to face this way, this is length. This distance right here is length. How long? This is longer, this is shorter. Now width is the distance between your heels, side to side. So this is very wide but not very long, right? So you have length and width, and it's all based on where you're facing. If I'm facing this way, I have a wide stance with no length. If I face this way, I have a long stance with no width. It all depends on where I'm facing. So we have basically three general categories of stances. We have, the young person stance, or the young man stance as they used to call it, which is, a long, slight, not very wide, but very long stance, which is great to tire out your legs if you're training. It's also great for strength along this narrow axis here. I'm not too stable side to side, but if I'm in a tournament, say, situation and I'm trying to not move my feet, or if I'm looking to really stand my ground here against pressure no matter what, then a long stance is good, because I have all this distance that I'm trying to defend, and I have some leeway here. And also I'm low to the ground. Then there's the sort of the old man stance or old person stance, which would be very small, kind of like that. A little more width, a little more equal length and width, but you can see it's very small. If I'm doing push hands this way, I've got to be very good because I'm defending a very small range of space. Like here I'm done, here I'm not. So it's very small. And as you probably guessed, I prefer the medium-sized stance. I prefer about shoulder length and about shoulder width. So the side view would be about here. I've got about shoulder width between my feet this way and about shoulder length that way. If there was a square on the ground that was the length of the angles on or the sides of the square was the same as my shoulders, my heels would be more or less on the kitty corners, on the opposite corners. So facing forward it looks like this, not sure if you can see that too well, and facing sideways it looks like this. So I feel like it's the best of both worlds. I'm getting some leg work, not as much as if I did super low here, but more than if I did it here. I'm getting some leg work. I definitely feel it in my thighs. Hold a medium-sized front stance for 5 or 10 minutes and you'll feel it. And I feel like I can defend side to side as well as front to back. I feel like I'm sacrificing some of my strength this way so that I can also have strength this way. Also, you notice that most people who fight, or if you watch street fights, or if you watch UFC or boxing matches, or any kind of fighting, you often see people fighting with their feet underneath their shoulders or underneath their hips. They're in this range here. You don't usually see this kind of thing in a real fight because it's hard to move when you're in low stances. Some people can do it, but I can't move really fast and efficiently if I'm in a really low, wide, or long stance. So those are nice training games, but I like to have my training come close to what I'd actually do. This is where I meet life. You know, I'm usually just standing something like this. I don't get the bad phone call or the bad news or the attack from somebody while I'm, you know, in this position here. And it's usually here. This is daily life. This is just where we hang out. So I want to be able to be in my, you know, ready position pretty close to that. So what I like to do is a medium-sized stance, something like that. I've got a little bit of play here. I can defend my side axis. I've got some on the forward axis, about shoulder width, about shoulder length. So I say that that's good for me. I don't know if it's good for you. You might be young and really looking to work your legs really hard. You might be looking for a tournament kind of position that you will, you know, score well in the tournament. You might be looking to do tournament push hands where you want to take a stance and you might be trying to not move your feet if that's the type of fixed step pushing hands you're doing. You know, you have different training goals. So depending on your goal, different size stance would be, you know, correct. But I really like these medium-sized ones. I also like stepping to that place empty. I like turning 90 degrees if I'm doing a basic forward step, and I like sinking on that leg. My center moves slightly forward but still behind the 50-50 line, and I like stepping long and wide. So my heel's going out on a diagonal line, and then I can shift my weight, and then I can turn and square myself here, and I've got my front foot at 12 o'clock and my back foot, since it's my left foot, would be at, say, 11 o'clock. And I have shoulder width and I have shoulder length, and I feel pretty good, pretty balanced, and pretty mobile, pretty ready to move and do whatever I want. So that's the kind of stepping, and that's the kind of stances that I like. So I encourage you to keep a fluid definition in your mind of correct, and think in terms when someone says that this or that is better or worse. Better or worse for who? For what? You know, for some people those big stances are great, and for other people the small stances are great. Some people say you should start with the really long and big stances, and you should gradually, as you get older, get smaller. I did larger stances when I was younger at this. I'm going to be 60 next year, so you know, my stance is around medium size, but I don't plan on letting it get any smaller. I like the workout. I think work is good, and so I don't see myself having a stance this big unless I live to be 98. When I'm 98, I'll shrink it down to that size. Meanwhile, medium-sized stances gives me the lead work, it gives me the flexibility, it gives me the mobility and responsivity that I like. So thanks for watching, appreciate it. If you like this kind of thing, subscribe to my channel or visit GeneBurnett.com.